And then I've been teaching the teachers like you guys for a couple of years here as well. So if you have any questions as we go, just feel free to raise your hand or, chirp in so we can get this. So is anyone totally new to Art in Action? No, we got one newbie. Okay. So first, I do have to tell you that they're videotaping this. So if you ask questions, I'll be repeating them back so that they can hear it better on there.
Is it going right now?
It's going right now. So give the shout out to your friend.
Shout out to Michelle Patterson watching us in Marin County. Hi, Michelle.
Okay, Michelle, we're expecting you to be paying attention the whole time. So what I will do as we go along, for you guys that know how the Art in Action gig works, is we show a piece of artwork, we talk to the kids about it, we have a discussion with it, and then we do some sort of artwork. We don't copy the artwork, but we do some sort of project that's based on the artwork. So first thing is you want to be sure you have your school login so you can get into the Art in Action website, because like you can see here, I'm just going to go through a quick version of what we'll do. Like this is the 8th grade. Come on. All right, come on. There we go. And it shows you can see it's going to show you each lesson. So this is the kind of thing like the night before you realize, oh my God, what did I sign up for? You're going to want to click on this and review, and it kind of shows you what the lesson is that you'll be teaching, just to remind you. So I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you because you guys can all do this. And we find that what most parents and teachers want is to go through how we actually use all the art supplies and how we do the projects. Because you guys can read and figure out the artists, where they're from, and all that kind of stuff yourself. So I'm going to go through each one and show you the projects and show you how to do it and show you some tricks that you might want to do or not do. I'll talk to you if you have helpers in the class, you don't have helpers, which projects would be better for you to do. So one thing, when you start this, the first thing they need is a sketchbook. So you can make these sketchbooks. If you bought the packets, it comes with the paper, but it has to be stapled together. So if you have kids in the school that need to do service projects, this is a perfect opportunity to pass those off, and they can make you these sketchbooks. And then the first day, have each kid's name on there ready to go. So when we start each project, there's a sketch that goes along with it. And we kind of find that the sketchbook really helps them to try things out at first, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then when they get the real project, they kind of have a thought already going in their mind. What I have now, so this year is 8th graders, and I find that 8th graders are a little emotionally traumatized by the whole fact that they're going to be growing up, and so a lot they might not be doing their best work as the 7th. I find the 7th grade is actually the best artwork that you get out of them. In 8th grade, there's not as focused, but they're very happy to be at Art in Action because you know everything that goes on. And the day in 8th grade, they're like, oh, thank goodness, just give me the paintbrush. So it's kind of like therapy in 8th grade. So, but I still, and there's a lot of social interaction going on. So I really suggest you have a seating chart for the kids. And so they know from the very first day, I sit at this table, and there's these 3 people at this table, and these are going to be my Art in Action people for the semester or the year or whatever. And so there's no discussion over who sits here and who doesn't sit, which is a huge issue in the 8th grade. Saving seats, all that kind of nastiness, don't have that. We've got your seats. What I do when they're coming in the room is I'd have on the board, I would have written the artist's name, the year that the artist is born and died, and where the artist is from. And I have that written on the board, and I expect them to come in and write that down. So it gives them something, instead of just sit around and chat until you start, sit down and get this done. And they should know already, because they've been doing this hopefully along the way, to subtract this out and find out how old is the artist, because that's going to be my first question. They're like, oh, okay. So I have them put so they will have these pages of the artist all the way through. And maybe when I come in, I would go to the last one and say, so what, like Vincent van Gogh was our last lesson, so what do we know about Vincent van Gogh? And they're like, what? Aren't we on to someone new? So just one comment about Vincent van Gogh, because we're trying to actually keep this information in our brains. So we're going to go back to the artist Vincent van Gogh. Oh, he was from France and did Impressionism. Okay, you're right, that's good. And then move on to the next. And they will know that you're going to ask them that every time. So they'll sit down and they're like, oh, what did we do last time? Oh, yeah, Vincent van Gogh. Oh, does anyone remember anything? So you'll see them sitting down having discussions about the artist from last time because they know you're going to ask about it. So what I'm going to do here is, let's see, I'm going to show you this one. And, oh, geez. It's going to require the glasses. Oh. Okay, where it is. Action. Okay. Oh, for God's sake. Okay. 2019. All right, can't get it as usual. Okay, I'll get someone to sign us into that in a second. So we will start with Roy Lichtenstein. And some schools have a poster, a collection of the posters that they show the kids, and some people show it, they can show it up on a computer or up on a board like that. So figure that out before you go in there, because like me, if I had 30 kids sitting here and I can't get in there, I'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to describe this to you. So they have to be able to see the poster. And some schools have, let's see, this version. Yeah, some of them have this version and some of them have this version. So they're both Roy Lichtenstein, and you can see what they are. Let me put this under here. It's kind of based, there's always like an emphasis word there that shows a sound. And the word for that is onomatopoeia. So you want to write that on the board so the kids will be like, what? And that's a word that spells a sound, like oink, splat, womp. So there's a lot of those kind of words out there. And so what I do is usually go through the class and have each kid tell me one word but I don't let them repeat it. So oink, meow, splat, whoosh. So they get all these words in our mind. So now we have like 20 of these words in our mind, because what I'm going to ask them to do for the project, and I'm just going to show you this project because you really don't need to do this one, you can see, is to think of one of these words, put the emphasis word on there, and then draw what that word is about. So this one, swoosh, and you can feel, when you say that word, you can feel that word. You can feel it's kind of swooshing across like that. They're good at this because they all know about different fonts and different sizes, and they're used to doing this on the computer, but then when they have to do it themselves, they're like, wait, how do I do that? So there you find a lot of kids have maybe trouble with the S, because S is kind of hard, or they want a big one, and then to make them bigger, they're like, ooh, I did that too big. So in their sketchbook, I'd have them write one of these words to try to see how you do that, because it is kind of a interesting way to do that. I have a lot of samples of this one, Snip. This one's cutting up his report. It's about 8th grade level. Ding. So also, Roy Lichtenstein was famous for the Ben-Day dots, which are these little dots that he sees, because he was how he got interested was in comic books. And you have to kind of explain to the kids what comic books are, and that these were books that kids wanted to get, and they was kind of told like a series, and they would come out every maybe 2 weeks or something, and they would buy the comic books and tell them story. And how they were quickly printed, they only printed in maybe 2 or 3 colors because that was a quick way to print it. And they used these Ben-Day dots that were invented by a person named Benjamin Day, so that's why they're called Ben-Day. And they were just kind of to give shape to things. Instead of, making too much effort, they could just put some dots on there, and it kind of gives the shape to that volleyball. So this project is fairly easy to do. Once the kids get it, they understand what you want. It's just felt pens. They could do it if you don't have any helpers. This is an easy one to do. I do have to say that you're going to have to warn the kids straight away that like some schools might not like that one. So I've seen one it was a great one, but it was somebody in hand with a broken wine glass and blood dripping down. It was like, well, that's artistic, but We're in 8th grade, and we can't hang that up. So you might have to start off the top with them. There will be no blood, no guns, no weapons. And once you tell them that, they're like, oh, all right, well, think of something else, okay? So, but I do have to warn you, if you don't tell them that, you're going to get some of these. From whatever classroom you're in, you're going to get some that you're like, ooh, we can't really put that one up. So, so anyway, that's what those are. And when I'm done here, when we take a break at like 10:30, 10:45, if you want, you can come up and photograph any of these if you want to, like, remind yourself what it is. On the website, there's always a sampling of like 6 or 8 pictures and they're not the best pictures we've ever seen, but they're kind of average. So you'll look at it and go, oh, okay, that's kind of what I should expect. Because, and we did it that way because if you put all these great ones on there, you're like, oh, we're never going to be getting to that stage. So let me get Kelly, see if she can put me on here. Hey, Kelly, can you sign me on here? For some reason, as usual, I can never get on. So, the secret password. Oh, that's why. There you go. Then that should be right.
That should be right then.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, thank you. All right. So as we go along, so okay, I don't want that. I want this one. Lessons. Come on. 8th grade. So that was the first lesson. We just did that. Now we're moving on to Flo Oi Wong, and I'll just show you some highlights of this. You can see up in the left-hand corner the artist biography, and I find this part helpful. The biography, let's see first.
Flo Oi Wong.
Let's turn up the volume.
Flo Oi Wong.
So you can see if you click on that, it'll tell you how to say the name. Some of them are easier than others, but some of them you're like, I think I better check. So that helps. That always tells you how to say the artist's name. So when I have the kids, I have them have written this down in their book. And then if you have a map in the classroom, I always have the kids go to the map, and each drawing you can draw something in geography out of it. Where the artist was from, where his mother was born. You know, there's a whole story about the artist, so you can easily find something about where. And so I have the kids go to the map, like this one, Flo Oi Wong. She was originally from China, and I have them go to the map and identify China, and identify where we are, San Francisco, and I show them, even in 8th grade, you have to tell them, how far is this? So you can either Google that beforehand so you know the answer to that question, or you can say, well, that on the airplane would take you like 15 hours on an airplane to get there. And then they get it, because some of the things, sometimes they have no concept of how far we're talking, and that's important for them. And so this project is a project that the Flo Oi Wong is from Oakland, so they should be able to identify that, we'd hope. And she did this project as a tribute to her husband, and it's multimedia. So she did it on a piece of cloth bag from a rice bag, and that's the cloth bag in the back. You can see with the words there. And then she embroidered some words on there about him, and she put pictures of him on there, and so it's kind of a collage, cultural collage kind of thing. The kids are great at this. This one, there's a lot of opportunities to learn in this one. Let me put that up there. So this one, they kind of have to prepare ahead. And they're in 8th grade, so they can prepare ahead, and they can get on the computer. So you say, tell the teacher, next week we're going to do this project, and the kids have to have prepared ahead, or there's nothing they can do. So what it is, and again, I'm not going to make you do this one right now, but I'll show you. So it comes with like the pieces of fabric. Yeah, they're about this size, piece of fabric. And it comes with needle and thread. It comes with some little sparkly things. It comes with these styrofoam pieces. So what I'm going to ask them to do is bring in some pictures, pick someone they know. It doesn't need to be someone in their family. Most of the time they pick like their grandfather, somebody, and write, because we're going to make a cultural collage of that person. So things that come from their culture, like a little tiny Chinese flag. One kid I know, he was Chinese and Italian. So we had a little Chinese flag and a little Italian flag, and it was his father who was doing it too. He had pictures of his father. He had pictures of like the house the father lived in, brothers and sisters, some key words about them. Because in our culture, in the California, everyone's come from somewhere. So a lot of kids know their somewhat of their history. So you say, let's delve into this, look into this, find a word that describes the people. If you did on your grandfather, what describes your grandfather? So this one said, this kid did kind-hearted. So we want to have a word. What we're going to do, so the kids have all this stuff, and they're going to, usually in 8th grade, they're kind of doing a cultural project sometimes, so you can ask the teacher, when is this project and when can I do this? So several different things we would do. One is I would have them sew like little sayings about the person. So you can see on this one, the teacher had them write a couple paragraphs about the person, and you can see we're going to sew the stuff on there. I'll talk to you about sewing in a minute. And then around the edge, I'm writing some things about a new language, a new culture, old world, boat, homeless, lost sons. So words about the family, words about the experience of the culture coming here, the cultural experience for that person. And then I have them bring in a little trinket, because the kit comes with these little tiny plastic bags, and they can put something in there. Some kids brought in like rosary beads I've seen coins, I've seen little pieces of fabric, so something is important but not that important. So do not bring in the engagement ring like one kid did. I'm like, oh, no, where did you get this? Please bring that home immediately. So just a trinket to put in. So you kind of have to tell the kids you're going to have this little plastic bag and you want to put a trinket in there or something, take a picture of the ring and put in there, or a fake ring if you really want the ring thing going. But so we're gonna put that on. So the sewing, so the kids have no idea what sewing is basically. They have no idea that the eye of the needle, when you explain to them the little hole in there is the eye of the needle, and you can talk about that phrase about camel passing through the eye of the needle, and they're like, oh, is that what you're talking about? I've heard that, but I didn't know what that was. So I start with the needles threaded, and I tell them, it's threaded, it has a knot on the end. This is the only time I'm going to thread this needle for you, because we got to start somewhere. But from then, after that, you're going to have to thread the needle yourself, which is not that easy. So I start, everyone has a needle and thread with a knot on the end. I said, don't pull it off. And about half of them go, whoop. I'm like, all right, well, now you're going to need to thread the needle. So it's going to take you a while to explain how to thread the needle.
Is it like a big, huge needle or a teeny tiny needle? Like a different needle?
Well, you're going to need your glasses. Let's put it that way. I mean, it also comes with, I think it's, a lot of people use these needle thread. I mean, they're pretty big needles, but big needles hard to thread through. So, and we want the kids to be able to do this. So, when they pull it off, so I would also bring, if you have a sharp scissor at home, like a sewing scissor, because trying to cut that thread off doesn't work very well with these crummy scissors you have at school. And I show the kids from the beginning, take the piece of thread, snip a bit off, put it in your mouth, squeeze between your fingers, and try to thread the needle. And this takes like 10 minutes. So you're like, really? Okay, people, now you're going to need this at some point in your life. So that takes a while, and that's kind of frustrating to them, but they're in 8th grade, they should be able to at least thread the needle. So I also brought in some buttons, and I had kids, or asked the kids to bring in a stray button to work with. And the kids had to sew a button on. And they all had a really hard time sewing a button on, understanding to put it through, and the kids were just like, oh, this is so stupid. And then one of the teachers, in the class I was teaching, the man teacher comes in and he goes, oh, he was giving no sympathy. He's like, you better sew that on because I sent mine to the laundry and they charged me $12 to put a button on. So you want $12? You can just sew that button on. Or you can wear your pants flying open. And they were like, oh, okay. So then they all sewed the button on, but because you do maybe need that skill in life. So, and I have had kids come back to me later and going, I'm so glad you showed us that. I've really done that a lot. Yeah, that's going to be a task in life. So anyway, this project might take more than one lesson, or it might take like a prep lesson that you go in and talk to the teacher and you be sure everybody's got their stuff and that we know what we're doing and we got a word. And the word they're going to do, they're going to put it on this piece of foam, and they've all done the printing before. So they know how this foam works.
What grade was that they did the printing in?
Oh, they've done it like 4 times. They did it in 3rd grade. They did a Polynesian one. They've done several different printing. So they know what.
Just have 6th, 7th, 8th.
I think they've done it in 6th grade, yeah. So this is, you don't play with this because any scratches you put on there will be permanent. So I usually don't give these out until we're ready to go. And then what they do is we've got our word in our head and we put it, I don't have my, I would draw a word on this type of paper. So say I want to draw, I'll just give an easy word, kind, K-I-N-D. If I write it this way, and I put it on here, I'm going to end up like this guy got some of the letters backwards. See, the N is backwards because you have to put it in backwards to make it work. So some of them are like, huh? So you have to kind of look at it like, oh, how do I do this backwards? So that takes them a minute to figure that out. And then we're going to put it on the piece of styrofoam with a dull pencil. The dull is very important at this point. If it's too hard, you just dig right through and it just makes a big mess. So I'm going to write it on here. And then I'm going to take with a brayer, where's my brayer? I take some ink, I take some paint, let me find my brayer, which is usually out here. What's a brayer? Corks. Here we go. This thing is the brayer. Then you have a piece of, this is a floor tile, so you probably have something like this around. I put the paint on. I take this brayer and roll it to, I'm trying to load the paint into the brayer. So this you might want to try a little bit this at home or before so you get the right amount on this. So it takes a few swirls. So this might, okay, where's my kind word? Here we go, thank you. And I put it on here. So I'm kind of loading this up. So this, hopefully, this I would do after the kids have done a lot of the sewing and they've saved a spot for the word. So save a spot here, then sew your stuff on, because this has to dry. So I'm going to put this down. And let's see if I did it backwards or not, which I do a lot. Ooh, I did it backwards. It didn't. So 2 things I did wrong here. One is I wrote it backwards. I should have written it from printed from the other side, because now it's, so I would have the kids try it first before they put on their permanent thing. That's one thing that made it not work so great. Another is when I wrote this word on here, I should have pressed a lot harder and deeper into this word. Hard and deep so that it really digs in there. I probably did it too fast. It didn't dig into that. So the kids that have done the printing before, they know to do this and they know to test it because they've seen these mistakes several times. Like, I don't want that to be me. So, and I would print a few, maybe if you have some that you can show them and see how they did this backwards, but the end didn't get going backwards. Like, so you can, if you hold it up this way, you can look at it and see which way is backwards. You're like, oh, okay. So anyway, this is a very parents love this project, as you can imagine. There's a lot of discussion about this, and this is a big one for like open house and things. They're really fun. Yes, they're really good.
We have just 50 minutes. 50 minutes is very short.
50, 50. So I would be sure the kids have to have everything ready to go. And
We have two periods, the two groups, 50 minutes and a break, 5 minutes, and 50 minutes for the other group.
so
Very short.
very short. So,
Yesterday we have done the Caleb.
oh, Bingham?
Yes, and there are no inspiration, and it was very short time.
It's a short, yeah. So I would say with this one, maybe if you could go into the classroom before and talk about the piece of artwork to get them inspired so they know what to bring from home. So they,
Teacher need to tell them what they need to bring.
Yes.
And, before, and maybe we need two stereotypes.
you might need that for this one. You,
Very beautiful, and for actually for 8th grade, I think is the best one.
yes.
And
And I see a lot of parents that have saved this one hanging on the wall or something, or,
they
you know,
talk
give it to
about-
grandpa or
yes,
someone.
they
That's,
talk about family,
Yes.
where they come from.
yes. And I also found, though, I found that it's important that you go through the spelling of this stuff too. Before they, like one kid was finish, and she wrote it like finish, like the verb to finish. You're like, I don't think that's how you spell that. You better look that one up. So some of these, and I had one kid that was a great one. It was going to go in the art show, but he had a word on there spelled wrong. So maybe have them write it in their book and go through. Are you sure that's how you want to write those words that you want to write around the edge? Let's be sure we have the right spelling of that. I also had some kids that wanted to write things in a different language. Some kid that wanted to write it in Chinese. So I said, okay, you going to write in Chinese. I can't help you with that. Go and ask your mom or grandma or somebody if this is the correct way to write it in Chinese. So the preparation, there's a little preparation in this one. You just don't show up with this one. So, okay, now we are going to do, so let's go back to Edward Hopper lessons. Come on. No, we don't need that. So on this one, Edward Hopper, this one I'm kind of talking to this one, and we talk about, this artist liked to show the emotion of things and how we can show our emotion through art. And like this one, the loneliness of this house. You're like, wow, that's a great house. Yeah, but it could be right out in the middle of absolute nowhere. It doesn't look like there's any neighbors. There's no friends. It doesn't look like there's any play equipment. It just looks like very lonely, dark. As the sun is setting, it's dark on this side. It doesn't even have a front door. It just looks like a lonely spot. But it shows the emotion. You can feel emotion from this. I talk about where is the light source coming from for this one, because we're going to ask them about that. So the light clearly isn't over here. The light's coming from here, so you can see it on these surfaces. You can see the light coming. So there, the whole house is painted the same color, but because of the shadow, this looks a lot darker. So keep that in your mind, because when you do your house, you're going to paint it a color, but you're going to talk about a light source, and you might have you need to have it darker, the part that's in the shade. So we're going to draw a house from 2-point perspective. This house, I say to them, like, if I was to, which part of this house is closest to you? Is this back here? Is this over here? What would really be closest is this front angle right here. If you're going to walk to that house straight from here, the first thing you would hit is that angle there. So it's 2-point perspective from this side and that side, with this being the closest. So this one, oh, here I can show you the student art. This is good. You can see there the samples of the student art. Some of them are all exact same, which is fine. They follow the directions. Some kids take it, you know, like this one here. This kid had the top story and windows, and we got shutters, we got arches, like, woo! Whereas like the one on the top right, was following exactly what I told him to do. And we got a door, we got windows, we got a roof, we're good to go. So you could have a variety of that. Your kind of engineer kids are going to love this one because they got the ruler, and the really, really artistic-y ones have a much harder time. And I even had probably the most artistic kid in the class, she just lost it because I said, you have to use a ruler, and she didn't want to use a ruler. It's like, well, go ahead and see what you could get. And she couldn't get it to look correct. And I tell them, you don't always have to do it this way, but once you understand what lines are going to be parallel, then when you do it in your creative sense, you can, it'll be correct, and you won't look at it and go, what line's off? Because that can throw them off. So I'm going to show you how to do this. We're going to do this sample. I think you guys have a piece of this paper here. Two things to show you on this one. This one is, you can see here, there's a video here, and the video is 15 minutes long. So these are meant for you to watch this, the adults to watch it. The kids do not want to sit and listen to 15 minutes of this. So this is going to explain things to you, how to set things up. I have seen parents just come and click on that, and the kids are like falling off the chair. Too much, it's not very fun, exciting. So, but it's good for you. So you guys watch it, but don't try to get off and send it.
Sometimes though, when I've done this, when the project is super complicated to explain, I'll do all the overview discussion, all that stuff myself, but then I'll just play that like 4-minute project part.
So you could do that.
Yeah.
That just shows that, but
Yeah.
they're not ready. They don't want to sit for 15 minutes. And I'll show you in the back in either the book or in here under. I'll show you docent. No, not the docent forum. I don't want that. Come on. Download and resources. So here are like extra things you might need. If you want to send home the summary, see the third one over is a lesson, the summary in English. Some people want to send that home with the kids or put that on the back of the artwork. It's in English and it's also in Spanish. And there's also key concepts in English or Spanish, so if you want to look at those. And at the end there are the labels, the PDF of labels. If you can print, what this is, it's all set up so you just can put the kids' names in, and then it prints off on labels. It tells you what size label to use. So you can have the labels that are already made. Do we have any up there? That say the name of the school, the child's name, the artist that it's inspired by. If you have these labels, it's a lot easier to just put those on as you go than depend on the kids to write their names on it. So there's how you can do the labels. But a key part here for this one is show how to draw a house. And this shows you step by step how to do this. You might want to print it off like this for the kids. Some kids are like, that's fine. I don't need to listen to you anymore. I'm good with this. If you set this out at the table, even as you go with the kids, it's very helpful to them. So let me show you. I have some demo to show them how to do it. So we're going to do step by step. This project, I would say do it step by step to a certain point and then let them go. But not just explain and then say, okay, can you guys do that? Because they're like, what? So this, I'll put this up here. So let's take our piece of paper and we're going to use our ruler. By 8th grade, they should know how to use a ruler, but you might want to run through it with them. And you want to check that the rulers are all, they're not chipped, because the kids get so frustrated when they sit down, it's all chipped up ruler. It's like, well, what is this doing for me? So what I have them do is, I'm going to put this aside. So 3 inches, so I have them fold over like just lightly, like this. And the reason we do that is because then they kind of know the house is in the middle zone. Because when we didn't have it folded over, we had kids drawing, the houses were getting way too far over. So just so they know, the house is going to be in this middle section. So have them fold like that and over. And then I'm going to have them draw from the bottom 3 inches up. So take their ruler. They got to make a mark 3 inches up, just a little tick. And another one across the paper. And because if you connect 2 points, you make a line. So here's my, and I measured 3 inches up 3 different times. And then I'm going to connect the line. And so we're in 8th grade, so we don't need to press incredibly hard. The younger kids, you know, they drill it in. They draw so hard. And say, you don't need to draw so hard because a lot of these lines are just support lines, so you're going to be ending up erasing them, so you don't want to draw them so hard. But I'm going to draw them harder so at least you can see what we're doing. So we've got the 3 inches up. So this is miniaturized. Here's the fold. Here's the line 3 inches up. Then I'm going to take another line. So this is going to be the center point of this is the line we're going to draw is this first center point here. It doesn't have to be, it has to be in this center part of your paper, but it does not have to be anywhere particularly. And we need to 3 inches, okay, we're going 3 inches above and 2 inches below the line. So anywhere in the center section, and it's going to go up 3 inches and down 2 inches. So that's this. So I would say, okay, does everybody have this? And then we want to draw a vanishing point right at each corner where the line is at the very edge there. So draw your vanishing point there. They should know, if they've been doing art in action, they'll know what the vanishing point, that everything is vanishing off that. If your school some schools have 18-inch rulers, and those are better. So schools have done this for a while, have been like, you know what, we're going to buy the 18-inch rulers because it's really a hassle otherwise. So here what I'm going to do is from the top of the line over to the vanishing point, and again from the top of the line to the vanishing point. And I'm going to draw it a little harder so you can see. Where'd my pencil go? So you can see that. So that's what we've done here. And then from the bottom to the vanishing point, which is going to be here. So then we do our bottom. And then I'm going to do 2 vertical lines, which are going to be the edge of the building. And they can do any type of building they want.
Is that at the fold?
No. No, anywhere they want in there. Because it's that, you'll see that that'll either make your house really long or. The fold is just to keep them in the center of the drawing. Because sometimes we had kids drawing and it looked like, you know, like a massive bunkhouse because it was so big. Oops. So has everyone made it to this stage? Okay, so you can see that this is developing into the house. Then we're going to move on to the next version. And this is, you can see that this is all on this how to draw a house thing. So we're down to, we've drawn that, we've drawn the top one, now we're going to do the next one, we're going to do the pitch of the roof. So just draw a point on the top of your roof and draw a roof to it. Some kids will draw it maybe way over and you're like, whoa, that doesn't look right. But really the geometry to figure out the exact point is way more than necessary. So they can pretty much just put a point and draw that in there. Pitch of my roof. So that's here. See, they put the pitch of the roof. Got the roof. You could do it on either one, either side. depending on what's going to be the front of your building. And then from the point on the roof, let's take this down, we can see it a little better. So you've got the point from the point on the roof here down to the vanishing point, and then you're going to see you've developed a bit of a roof. Okay.
Wait, where do we put our second point? Not that one, the next one.
So then from there you draw from there down to the vanishing point. And then you're going to draw the back of the roof here. This line needs to be parallel to this line of the roof, that line and that line. So they have to be at the same, to make it the same angle. And you can see, so that one's right here. This line and that line are parallel. So now you can see a box being created there, right? A house with a pitched roof. So I would get to this point, and then I would say to the kids, now I want to be sure you draw a door and some windows. And I want to see you draw some landscaping. And they will do, once they get this, they're like, oh, I get it. So to draw a door on there, you can see everything is at the vanishing point. So the top of the door, you just draw from the vanishing point, whoosh, top of the door. Everything that's vertical is going to be parallel to that front line. So you just draw whoosh, the door, the window, the window. The same thing here, the window, the window. And if it's on this side, it goes from that vanishing point. And if it's this side, it's coming from this vanishing point. And the kids are very good about drawing this, and they'll be drawing shutters and like, wow, okay.
How many time this lesson is 1 hour? No, 1 hour and a half?
Yeah, you can do it in an hour. I've done it in an hour.
In two parts. The first part just to draw, and the second lesson just to
Paint.
paint.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Oh, I'm supposed to repeat it for the home people. So the question is, how long does this take? So if you did it in two parts, the first part you could do the drawing, and then the second part you can come in and do the paint, the watercolor. It's pretty fast to do the watercolor once they get going, once it's all drawn. It's pretty fast to do the watercolor. And then they'll also want to erase off these lines here.
Because I remember in 5th grade, there are lessons, remember, with the diagonal and
Yes, yeah, the room,
and,
yeah.
It was very hard for them, I remember.
Yes.
And we need two lessons because it was very hard.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it takes, but now in 8th grade, they have done this. They already know how to use a ruler, so you don't have to go through the 5 minutes of that.
one group is math advanced, and the second one is math no advanced, and it's very hard.
It will be different, yes. But you can see the kids can do this. So we've done this through a lot of different 8th grade classes, and the kids will do it. Some will be, like that top one, it's just basically the house. And you can see there's a little trouble with the roof. The top corner of the roof is not quite right. See, the roof should be right here, and then they made too much roof, but it was fine. And this one is basically the same exact thing. Made it longer, but so then I have them paint in some landscaping and windows. This one maybe didn't do that window quite correctly. It's not quite at the right angle, but they kind of get the idea. Some kids will take it much farther.
Do they not erase those lines?
They should erase those lines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, erase the lines before they watercolor.
Okay.
So then with the watercolor, I asked them where the light source is. So you can see in those two pictures, both the yellow houses, you can see one side is lighter than the other. So you can see they did think about the light source. And then I would say on the same thing with the roof. The bottom one, maybe this one was better, that this is lighter and this is darker. So the watercolor thing doesn't take very long once they've drawn it off. But so if I was doing this in 2 parts, I'd have them just sketch the house, sketch the doors, the windows, the shutters, be done. And then when they came for the second time, I would have them do the erasing of what doesn't need to stay there and do the watercolor, which wouldn't take too much time. But this one is surprisingly quiet in the classroom when they do this, because you're like, they're thinking, wow, all right, I got to focus on this one, because this takes a little concentration. But all the kids were able to do this. So yeah, they're pretty good with this. You don't have to explain too much. Yeah, or you could print this. I find that if you could print these out, then each one can kind of, then they move along better, because otherwise, you know, you don't want to do too much waiting on one. So that one might be a little bit harder if you're the only one in the classroom, because if some kid gets off and you try to help that kid, then you could lose control. But so I would want to have at least one other person with me helping to do that one. So, okay, this one is Dorothea Lange, and this is photography. And this, they've probably seen some picture of Dorothea Lange. I think it's in the California State curriculum in history. So they probably have seen some pictures from these artists in their history books. They like to hear the history of this, because she took a lot of her pictures. She's a woman artist. She took a lot of pictures. She worked for the government, and she was kind of a reporter. Her job was to go out and take hundreds and hundreds of pictures and send them back to the housing department to show how people were doing. I mean, that's such a huge issue right now of how are people housed, how are these people living. And this was a picture of a woman and her children, and these were homeless people at that time. And this picture was taken in Nimpomo, which is down near San Luis Obispo. And the people would come through the migrant people would come through the state, and they were picking peas. So this family would have come, the mother and several children would be at the camp. Maybe the dad would go in and pick the peas, and then after the peas were all gone, they would move up the state and do the strawberries and continue up the state. So it was a migrant group of people. I talked to the kids about how do you think she feels? How do you think she has much money? Why yes, why no? You know, how do these kids feel? You know, so the kids are very sympathetic at this in 8th grade, and it's a really good example to teach them about, especially since homelessness is so much out there now. How do you think these people feel? And what can they do to help their situation and those kind of things? So this picture, what we're going to do is we're going to learn to draw a face in black and white, and we're going to learn to use with charcoal. So let's put that up there, and let's look at in your pile here. So the kids come with this pre-done picture that's kind of pre-drawn, so they have an outline. And what we're going to do it also comes with these pictures, so that the pictures, they can look at the pictures closer, so they can see how it's darker on this side, the thatching on her collar, and her frow on her brow there. So what I want to start with is, you guys have this in your pile, and then I think you also have another piece of paper there that we're going to use, this piece. And what we're going to do on this one is we're going to do a value chart. So we're going to get the piece of charcoal. So there's little pieces of charcoal. The charcoal comes in a wooden box like this, because I've had people ask, they're down there doing the project, they're like, I don't know where the charcoal, what is the charcoal? So the charcoal's in this box, in case you're looking at your school. It's just a pile of charcoal. So what I want them to do first is to do a value chart to show the value you can get out of the black and white, because in order to, so the value chart is, you can see it up there, it's divided into 5 different things, and I want to do 5 different shades of black. So, well, I pretty much can, so you guys can try this. You can draw really dark. Like, okay, well, that's not hard. You can rub that. It's like, okay, so I know how to do the dark. And then I can show, I want it a little, not quite as dark. So I can show them how, like, and we also have the tortillon, which is like a little, I don't see if I have one here. Some schools have these. Let me see where. Can't find my tortillon at the top. I will ask someone to get us a tortillon. But also in your trays, I see some of you have this rubbery piece of stuff that looks like wad of gum. And this is an eraser. And so you can erase in your dark to make it lighter, to take off some color. And then I do, can you get me a tortillon? Sorry, in reverse. So then the next one, not quite as dark. So some kids it's pretty easy to do this, and some of the kids just have like 5 really dark blobs. You have to like lighten up a little bit. So you can see that if I did that, I would get it even lighter. You can see maybe even lighter than that I could do with little dots. And maybe the lightest, I might even just have it on my fingers, and because so it takes, so to show them how they can get the different values out of this one piece of charcoal. And they can also do it by using this gummy piece. They love this gummy eraser thing. And you know, you find out when the lesson's over, you're like, okay, oh, perfect. Oh, perfect, thank you. I'll show you these two. So you can see at the end of the lesson, you got to say, okay, everybody, we need to be sure to put all these erasers back in the box, because they just love to take these things home, because these are like,
We had to take them away.
yeah,
They were making crazy shapes that you don't
yeah,
even know about.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you do have to be, yeah. But after a while, they realize, okay, she's serious. Give me that thing. Give me the, and so this is the tortillon. And what it really is paper rolled up in, and you can look around at your school and see if they have these. And so this can be used to like take away color and to rub color in. And so, and to see how it kind of makes it even. So this is just another tool for them to use, which they probably haven't, most kids don't have one of these at home. And I don't know if I can give you here. Would you like to practice a little with these? See how these work? Oh no, that's the twig. That's a whole nother project.
What do you call this as?
Tortillon?
Tortillon.
Yeah. And they're,
Don't we call it as tongue?
what?
No?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Yeah, tortillon, then they're made of paper, so sometimes they unravel. So I ask them, don't pick at these things and unravel them, because it's a rolled up piece of paper. And once you unravel it, it's no good. But so I have them work with that. And once we've kind of established that, then I give them this picture, and I want them to color this in the black and white. So with a light source, so where's your light source? So for her, you can see the light source looks like it's coming up from down here. The back of her hair is very dark. So they'll color that in really dark. You can see like around this side of her face would be very light. But the important part is they know there's a light source there, and then to fill these in. They all look like, you can see that one down below there, and they just did their color chart along the bottom, their shade values. They all look fairly similar, of course, because you've given them this start. But it's a great one for them to work on, and they seem to really like this one. They like the story of this one. There's lots of other pictures of Dorothea Lange out there, so you can show them a lot of different pictures of that. And they certainly, when they go into high school and they teach them American history, Dorothea Lange is an important artist. Yes.
In the lesson, it seemed like they were doing self-portraits.
No. No. In the lesson, in the,
Black and white photos of
Online.
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess they can, was that as an alternative lesson?
No, I think
Because it comes with the pre-drawn, just like that lady right there. So that would be hard to change that into my self-portrait.
I
So,
thought that was the sketch part, and then we were gonna have them take black and white photos of themselves and do themselves.
ooh, you
Yeah,
could,
it's
is that what it
it's-
says?
yeah.
Ooh. You could do that, but I would say that is a whole nother
So we'll
step
just
of,
stick with Dorothea.
I would stick with Dorothea Lange. She's already drawn out for you, because it looks, you have this. You could go to the next step and take black and white pictures,
We'll see how they do.
see how they do. And some schools want to add like different media in, so they want to have a photography lesson in there. If you want to do that and develop the black and white pictures and then have them draw that in, you know, you can do that. They know how to draw a face. And there is a cheat sheet up there on how to draw a face. So, okay. So that's Dorothea. Let's put her over here. So George Caleb Bingham, we're going to try this one as well. So that's the artwork. Now this is an artist that liked to draw pictures in the Midwest, of the expansion into the Midwest. So there's a lot of pictures of him that he drew, pictures going down the Missouri River. And I'd never seen the Missouri River until like 2 years ago, so I had great expectations, and it was a little disappointing. It was like nothing. Like, oh, that's the Missouri River. Wow, the paintings really did a good job. So apparently the Missouri River was a very swampy, mucky river all the way down, and now it's been kind of put back in its bounds, so it does look like a river, but it's really small, and there's not all this mucky stuff. It was just a little disappointing, but anyway, so he kind of liked to draw pictures of the reality of what's going on with the working people in the Midwest, and a lot of them depended on the waterways to get stuff done. So you'll see a lot of pictures of people on rafts and canoes and these guys. The kids like this. You talk to them about, what do you think's going on here? How do they feel? Wow, they look like they're really working hard, don't they? And the kids are like, well, yeah, it's a good job. They're just What I talk to about them is the reflection in the water, because you can see here the cat, and it's reflected into the water. So here's the water line, and it immediately reflects over. But the reflection, like the reflection of him down here, is not very clear, because when you see things reflected in water, they're not clear. The motion of the water makes it like a blurry picture, but but whatever it would reflect down. So this project, what we're going to have them do is, I think you guys have a piece of paper there, kind of this hard white paper. So this one we're going to do with watercolors. So they need the watercolors. Everybody hopefully can use their own watercolors if you have enough packs of watercolors for everybody. And then if you look in your tray here, there should be watercolor brushes, which are different than the temper brushes. So the temper brushes are the hard brushes, and the watercolors are very soft. So can you guys see? Do we need to pass around? You got a watercolor brush? Yep, okay, you're good. Somebody else might. You got watercolor? Yeah, so it's very important to be using the correct brush since you're doing the watercolor. So this one, what we're going to do is we're going to draw a scene, and then we're going to flip over and get the reflection of the scene. So we're just going to test it out on this paper, but they'll be using a bigger paper. So what I have them do first is, again, I tell them draw very lightly, because you can't erase this. So it's either draw it in your sketchbook so you have it in your mind and then paint it, or if you think, I don't know if I can carry that thought over, draw it very lightly. So I'm going to draw a horizon line. And then I'm going to draw, well, maybe I want a tree over here, and a tree here, and I'm going to do a bridge. So very lightly on there. So I know where my horizon line is, and I'm going to do a bridge with some trees on the edge. But I can't erase this, so because once you put the watercolor on there. So some kids, they draw, you know, they want to draw these exact, you know, details. They're like, you know, this is watercolor. It's too, yeah. So what we do is then I'm going to fold the paper in half. And that is going to be, this is going to be the above the water, and this is going to be the reflection in below the water. And I'm going to need my spray, so you're going to spray this so it's wet. And of course, you know, you're working with 8th graders and spray bottles, so you got to try to curtail that action. Maybe I put a little too much, soak that in. So I'm going to take, I don't want to use too much water in my paint because it'll get too diluted. So I don't want it too diluted. So on mine, I'm going to paint my sky on there. So this is kind of wet. I'm going to paint my sky. Ooh, I used a little too much water. Okay, I've got too much water going there. I'm going to paint what's going to be my sky. And then I'm going to fold the bottom up and get my reflection, hopefully. So see, that's what I've gotten so far. Isn't that stunning? And then, but you can see you don't want too much water in this project because I had so much water on there that it just started to blur easy. So now I'm going to draw a red bridge. So I'm going to get the red paint. And if I want to mix red, if I want to mix it, I would mix it in the top here. So maybe red is, I don't want too much red. I want it reddish orange. So I would mix in the top of the watercolor tray here. So I got my paint. Now I'm going to paint my bridge. So you can paint your bridge or whatever your inspiration is. And fold it again. And I'm going to paint my, so do you want to, let's pass that around so you can have a little water. You might want to pass around a few tissues too if you need one like I did there. And then, so I have them continue to paint their scene and the reflection. And some kid is going to say, well, I want a cat, because of course they loved in the picture that there was this cat. It's like, okay, get a whirl, see if you can get a cat in there. But my suggestion is not too much, don't add too much water. The paint that you put on here, don't add too much water to it, because you're going to have enough water going. And so I have it painted. Then I'm going to you can see the reflections going. And you can use the tissue when you have your blue paint down there. They can use the tissue on there to take the paint off, and then it kind of looks like clouds. So if you want to do, you know, if you have a lot of blue on there, you use that to take it off. And then when you look at this, you're like, I'm looking through that bridge. There should still be sky back there, right? So now I'm going to try to go back and put my sky in the holes of the bridge. Which might be easier said than done. And again, do the flip. You can see they'll get a reflection. And it works out pretty well. All of them are pretty good. If they got something like this and then they want something, they want a little more specific, like if they want to put the cat in there. I don't think I'll put a cat in mine, but if you wanted some the less water to put in detail. If they want to do something detailed like a cat, they should do that with very little water. It should be very dry. Paint the cat pretty dry and flip it over, and then you can actually see the reflection of it. If it's too much water, it'll just kind of be too blurry. So this one looks great. If you have someone in your school who can do, can't necessarily come to the classes but wants to help out and do like a bulletin board, if you have somewhere in the classroom to hang, a lot of times the teachers are happy to let you, here's a bulletin board, can you please hang stuff? These pictures look really good hung all together, just one right next to another of all the watercolors. They're very good. They're pretty like that. So this is a good one. Kids love this one. It's kind of calming, except for the spraying the water bottle. It's not that calming, but if you're prepared for that, you're in good shape. Okay, so you guys can keep on with that, and I will move on to, is anybody in here doing clay in their class? Yes. Yeah. So I'll just show you the clay one. There's a clay workshop. I think it's in like 2 weeks. But this is the, I'll just show you a quick picture. This is the Mimbre pottery, and this is just a little pot they make, and they make it out of white clay, and the kids do the same thing in that they make a bowl and then they go back and they color it in with the Sharpie. They color in a symbol inside of it with Sharpie. I find with this one, when you want, they've made the bowls, they've dried, they've been fired, or if you're using the quick dry, it's kind of like Play-Doh-ish. It's got to dry, which is easy to do. If you can't fire at your school, the quick dry clay is very easy to use. It's not as messy as the whole clay procedure, but if you're going to go back and, so then they go back and draw a symbol in there, and if I tend to suggest we do a symbol from nature, and then when we're going to do that, I ask each kid in the class to tell me something from nature. So we have the nature idea in our head. So some kid might go in and draw a dog, a spider, a duck, whatever. But I highly recommend you give them a subject. You don't just say draw anything you want in there, because you'll get all sorts of pictures that you don't want on your pottery. I think this one comes with some samples of things that kids could draw in there, which are fairly easy with the pattern and little animals. They like to do that kind of thing. So if you're going to do the clay and you're going to do fire and all that stuff, there's a clay training at October 16th and 17th that goes through the whole how do you fire it and the whole issue of how to fire stuff. So you might want to come to that one. So we're going to do Grant Wood, and then I'll give you a chance to have a break, and then we'll come back. So let's, my reflective art is going in the bin. So this one is a painting by Grant Wood, and the kids, if they've done art in action since all the way through, they'll have remembered the picture of Grant Wood with the farmer and his wife that they did. I think in first grade they did that. So they should be aware of this artist as well. It's in the California curriculum in their social studies book or literature books. And this one, I always like to, let me get this one up online here. Let's go back. So this one is the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, and it tells you at the very beginning, see how it says 1931? That's when it was painted. What is it? It's oil on masonite. It tells you the size. So I try to tell the kids this. And where would I find this? At the Art Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I tell kids, when you're in New York, you want to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And they're like, yeah, I'm there. Okay, whatever, lady. But you'd be surprised how many people come back to me and said, oh, I was in New York and I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. That's a really big museum and had a lot of great stuff in there that I knew from Art in Action. Like, yes, exactly. So even though maybe you think you're talking to the walls, I always tell them that because, and I always say, when you go there, because you're all going to be going to New York eventually, and some of them are like, I don't think so. It's like, oh, you'd be surprised. You'll all go there, and when you get to New York, you want to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I always say this to the younger kids, when you get to Paris, you're going to want to go to the Louvre, right? So that's where you're going to go. So I had a friend of mine, as she calls herself the loser mother. So they went to Paris, and she brought the kids. We're going to Paris, but she wasn't sure how this was going to work out with the kids in Paris. So to start it off, we're just going to start and do a day at Disneyland, and then we're going to go in. And so they get off the plane, and they're all it was a surprise. We're all going towards the bus, the Disney bus, and the kid's like, where are we going? Oh, we're going on the Disney bus. And they're like, are you kidding? We're in Paris. We're supposed to be at the Louvre, not Disneyland.
It's too art for kids.
See, no, they were all, that's where they thought you go when you're in Paris. So this mother's like, oh, great, loser me, I'm taking them to Disneyland. And the first, they want to go to the Louvre. So, you know, you can take the kids to the museum, and they don't need to see every picture there, but definitely, if you're going to New York and you have kids from the Metropolitan and you're there, you bring them and you can show them the few art and action pictures they like. So this one we talk about the balance on this one. So you can see the road kind of makes you look through the whole drawing. Like, where are we going from these little bitty houses out here? The road is coming over the hills to this house. They don't live as far out to this house, who's right inside the town. And there's Paul Revere, and he has to go all the way out into the boonies out there. So we talk about that. We talk about, like, this looks like it was, I asked the kids, who painted this and where was the artist's view? And then the kid said, I think it was a drone. Well, maybe Paul Revere is on a drone, but maybe not. Maybe it's bird's eye view. So you tell them, it's like, this is what a drone would probably see, or this is what a bird flying overhead would see, because you can see it's from up above. The picture is taken looking from high up above. So on that note, we're going to do here I'll show you the student art. We're going to do a drawing with chalk. And I think you have a brown piece of paper there. And we're going to draw over the hills. There's some examples in here of other Grant Wood landscape, and so it's kind of a picture from up above of the hills, rolling hills. And if you're in the Bay Area, you can easily talk about the kids. When you look over in the East Bay, you see the rolling hills as they vanish out to the Sierras. So this one, I'm going to have them. So this one we're going to use the chalk pastels. Which is big different than the oil pastels. And the chalk pastels are probably not something most kids would have at home. These are kind of an expensive art supply. So it's kind of, they break very easily. So they look about like this after 10 minutes. And they're very dirty and dusty, but they still give off a great color. So this is definitely not a junk pack. This pack is in great shape still. The one thing about chalk is when you draw with it, it gets chalky, and we don't want to blow that on each other. And of course, 8th grade, they're like, oh, as soon as she turns her head. I'm like, no, because that can cause asthma and things like that. So let's not blow. So when you're drawing and you have chalk in it, just bring it over to the garbage can and dump the chalk off. Well, you guys got your chalk out. We're going to practice, and to get the kids started, I tell them pick 3 colors that you want to start with, because sometimes kids are just like, I can't decide, and you're looking at the clock, you're like, okay, you got 10 minutes. Can you hurry up and decide? So to get the kids started, I say, well, pick out 3 colors that you're going to have in your rolling hills, and start with these 3 colors. It doesn't matter what 3 colors. 3 is just an arbitrary number, but it gets them going of what do I need to do and what do I need to I got it 3 colors, so let's start with that. So then I'll have them draw some hills. Oh, here, let me put this up here so we can see it. Draw some hills. And some fields, and maybe a river coming down from the fields, and another. I have them keep trying different colors with your chalk. You can do. This is a oil pastel in there. So you can use the side of the chalk, you can rub them together and get your color. And I have them vanishing out. See how my river's vanishing to the end of the hills? A lot of times I have kids, the water vanishes off the top of the paper. Like, wait, this is the sky. It vanishes to the end of the earth. So that is an error that you will see, so you might want to help them out with that. Like, don't let it vanish into the sky. Like, oh, what is she talking about? Because you will see some of those. So give it some sky. And I have them say use, the blue is the first color you think of the sky, but a lot of times you might see different colors in your sky. So add some orange to the sky. Add some wheat. Some fields, going over the fields, or little cows or something. And I'll show you the student art. So this is kind of the thing these are the kind of things that you might see. And see, I said to them, let's do some different colors into the sky, and look at the sky they got. Put some cows in there. So kind of as they're going, they kind of get the rolling hills. Like, I kind of got the rolling hills, but now what? Okay. Then I would say, oh, how about you got some cows out there. How about the sun setting? How about a fence going over the hill? How about a road? So as your time goes, give them some suggestions to keep them going. I also am very conscious with 8th grade because they can get off track really fast and start chatting. To say, okay, keep going. Okay, Kevin, keep going, Kevin. I'm conscious of the clock, so really look at it and say, okay, you have 10 minutes, so everybody should be, we should have our rolling hills started. We should have some cows. What else do we see out there when you go to the country? There should have some sheep or something like that. But keep them going with that one. So this one is also the chalk. You don't want to drop the chalk on the ground and into the carpet. That's a problem. So I tell the kids, every little piece of chalk, however small it is, just put it back in the box. It's good. We're fine with that. And there are a lot of broken pieces, but that's okay. I tell them that, the PTA or someone is paying for these, and these are expensive. So let's take good care of them. And I think they're pretty conscious of doing that. I've also seen schools when they're done with this chalk, the chalk starts to get even little tiny pieces. Like, well, what? I wouldn't even throw those away. I would have them do some sort of project out on the playground to draw on the playground, because it's great and it washes off very fast in the next rain. So, you can. So I would use every bit of these chalks because they're expensive. But when you do your artwork, when you're done with it, you're going to need some hairspray. A bottle of this hairspray. And I would have, definitely in 8th grade, I would put this in the adults command and take it outside and spray it. And give it a good whirl of spray. When you spray it, you think, I think I ruined it. It's a little Monet because it looks all blurry for a minute, and you're like, oh, geez. But it's okay. It dries fine. So give it a good whirl of this. Some folks don't want to do this or forget to do this, and if you don't, when you come back in 2 weeks, you'll have paper and dust. And then you'll say, oh, they're right. We need to use a hairspray. So you need to use this hairspray, and you can't use the pump kind. You need to use this aerosol hairspray. So be sure to do that. Now, I know a lot of schools do a art show at the end of the year. So you find out if that's what your school is going to do. And also find out if your school sends the artwork home with the kids. Like some schools will say, okay, we're going to just do the art show with the Grant Woods stuff because we don't have space to keep all this stuff at school. So figure out if that's your school, because you don't want to be the person that sent all the artwork home and then you're supposed to pick from the art for the art show and you've sent it all home each week and you're like, ooh, well, we don't have any artwork. Some schools save all the artwork to the very end of the year, put it in portfolios for kids, and send it home as one big portfolio and let the kids pick, or they pick, a piece for the art show. So find out what your school's gig is for that. There's also the issue of mounting things. So something like, you can't mount every single piece. A lot of schools don't have the paper to do all the mounting, so you might only mount the piece that's going to be for the art show. So figure that out as well, because then you can, once they've decided the art show piece, that's a piece that you can decide to mount on a backward paper and have a nice label, that kind of thing. Here's one of my favorite techniques, which is just perfect with 8th grade. So a lot of kids, you're working along and, oh, there's 25 minutes to go. Well, they're done. You're like, you're done? 25 minutes? So they can walk around and just disrupt everything, and then you're like, wow, that didn't do that well, did I? So what I say to the kids that are done is I have strips of paper like this, and I have them, oh, you're done? Okay, great. So on a scrap piece of paper, write 3 titles for your artwork. And I'll come back in a minute and we'll see what you decided on. They're like, okay, so they'll write 3 titles, and then I give them a piece of paper like this, and I say, write the title that you think is the best, and we'll take that and we'll put that on, we'll put that on, then we're going to glue that onto your piece of artwork. I'm like, okay, and then, well, there's still 18 minutes to go and I'm done. You're done. Well, you know what? Now we're going to write a haiku. And they're like, oh, you're killing me, lady, really? I got to write a poem about my artwork? So next time they will not be done because they don't want to write a haiku or a title or a paragraph. They're just like, no paragraph. Like this one is perfect if they're done. Like, oh, write a paragraph about this lady and how she feels. And they're like, oh, no. So once you do that once and everybody sees that, you're pretty lucky they won't be done. They won't be pulling that one again. It's like, all right, I'll keep going. So,
That's smart.
isn't it? Let me tell you, they know. And when you have them in your pocket sticking out, they're just like, oh, don't ask. Don't tell her you're done. Keep going.
I'm having that hard time. What you're talking about?
Yes, because some of them are just not as interested maybe, but you got to keep everyone engaged so that they don't just distract the whole classroom. So 2 other things, let's see, is one is I always expect the kids to do their own cleanup. And I tell them, class is over at 11. At 5 minutes to 11, you all have to be done, and we're going to clean up, and we're going to wash all the paintbrushes or whatever. We're going to wash everything. So figure out how your school cleans it up. Some schools have a sink. And I can just tell you from experience that if they've got a lot of paint on their hands, to wipe the paint off with paper towel first and then wash in the sink. Because at my school, I ruined the whole pipeline that went to the street because it backed up. And then they went out and they dug it up and cut it open, and oh, it was beautifully colored. It was just full of paint. Because the paint, it's like, ooh, would that be our problem? We did that? So the paint pigment builds up after, 30 kids wash their hands there every day. So wipe as much paint off as you can. A lot of schools don't have a sink in the classroom, so you could use buckets like this from Home Depot. Just a couple of buckets full of water, and you can bring the buckets in there. 8th grade, you send them into the bathroom. You could repaint the whole bathroom. So you don't really want to do that, or you got some in the bathroom and some here, and some aren't coming back, and what's going on? So you got to keep track of that. So you got to kind of figure out what the method is for that. If you have buckets like this, I always put a few drops of bleach into it because we don't want that just to be like a cesspool in there. So it's worth it to put a little bleach in there and wash your hands. If the kids are all going to be putting their hands in there to wash. So, if they're wearing school uniforms, you want to be sure that they push up the uniforms so that they don't all have bleached out sleeves on their uniforms. So You got to explain this to them in 8th grade, though. They're old enough to know and understand what you're talking about that one. So, so that's that one. So, okay, it's about 10:30. We're going to take a break until 20 minutes till. What's her name?
Michelle.
Michelle, you can take a break now. Go make some coffee. And we will be back in about 10 minutes. The bathrooms are right out here, and there's some right out here to the right, and there's some coffee there if you want to get that, and then we'll come back and do some painting. Okay. Yes.
Try.
Take it outside that back door to spray it.
I,
Here, I'll show you. You got to give it a good whirl. is Mary.
Good morning. How are you? Oh, I'm supposed to. Yeah, he's pointing to the microphone.
Oh, inches.
Yes. Good morning. My name is Mary Carbolito, and I'm the Executive Director for Art in Action. And I just wanted to welcome you, and I wanted to thank you. I've been in the position for just a little short of 3 months, so fairly new. However, not new to Art in Action. I've been affiliated with Art in Action for 14 years. So my sons are now second year in college and senior in high school. So I sat where you are when they started in kindergarten. So it's been quite some time. And since then, I've also volunteered as a fundraiser for Art in Action. I've been a former board member. I continue to teach. I teach with a former board member over at a small school on the other side of Redwood City. And so it's what I love to do, is to be in the classroom with the students. So mainly I just wanted to say hello to all of you, and I wanted to thank you because you're busy moms, aunties, grandmas, but you choose to be here, and you choose to sort of hone your skill to bring art education to your child, to your community of children. And not all schools can do that across the United States, as you know, and the children are very fortunate to have you invest your volunteer time to do that. You saw us, we're excited about some new lesson lines that are coming about in 2020. STEAM, also cultural understanding, art and cultural understanding, art and social justice, and healing through art. And so stay tuned for those. Kelly Bravo, our director of programming, the director of programs, excuse me, she will be sending you a survey after this training. You guys are all nodding because you're well versed in all of this, right? You've done this many, many times. And I know it's one more thing for you to do on your very full plates, but we do look at that information. And especially me being new in this position, I will look at several years of trainings to see how we can best support all of you in what you do in your classrooms. So please let us know areas of improvement. We love to hear what we do well. And then ideas that may not necessarily be affiliated with training per se, but because you've been affiliated with the agency for probably at least 8 years, then you know how we operate well. And so please do feel free to express your ideas with us. Last but not least, I'm very approachable, meaning that you can either dial the general number or mary@artinaction.org. It's just as simple as that. And so please send me your feedback and your ideas. With that, it's my honor to be the executive director. And once again, thank you for spending your morning here. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your 8th grade year. Yeah, for some of you, it's your last year.
Yes.
Yes, I know. So maybe what you'll do is you'll volunteer continually with me.
Be here forever.
Thank you.
Okay, wait. These are not my glasses. This might have been Mary's. Right? Mary, are these your glasses? Are you going to be looking for these? Because I'll start to wear them in a minute and wonder what the problem is. Okay, good. Okay, so we will keep moving here. Okay, a few notes because I had a minute to think there. When you go online, what we're teaching you today is kind of the basic lesson that we have. But when you look online, there's some other options that you might want to teach it, like that one face where you could take a black and white picture and draw their self-portrait. There's several different things. So sometimes if you look at it and go, oh, I don't want to do it exactly like this. This is just like the basic that you could do. You could expand on it. You could do a lot of expanding on it if you want to. So you might want to read through those things and take, like I think on this one, the cultural one, sewing the button on is an extra thing that you might say, when you read through the basic, it doesn't say anything about a button. You say, what was the button thing? That was just a thing that somebody decided along the way we should add to that, and that's been a huge advantage, I would say. So as you go through the different lessons, you don't have to teach exactly like this, but this is kind of the basic outline of it. So, okay, this one is Robert Rauschenberg, and this is a culture. This is a collage of current events. So in 8th grade, they're starting to be aware of what's going on and what everyone's talking about. And a lot of times you'll hear them say stuff that's like, I don't think you quite got that story correct. But they're trying to, put their opinions on of what they've learned about current events. And in the 8th grade classroom, there's a lot of talking about current events. And sometimes they have some sort of current event contest. And so there's a lot of trying to bring kids into what's a current event thing. So these collages that Rauschenberg made were collages of current events that were going on at that time. So you can look at, if you look online and see some of the different ones, they're all about different events, and you can tell what this is this was about the space program. So we had some of that in there. This was about the science and technology. This part was a cutout about some sort of biology experiments that were going on at that time with that president. So for this project, we're going to ask the kids to make their own current events collage. It does not have to be the president. So you can just try maybe to go off of that. Otherwise, you're going to have all Trump ones. And you're like, wow, let's think of a different current event. So this is the kind of thing that the kids have to do ahead of time. And I ask them to go, you can ask them to either look in a newspaper if they know what those are, or go online and get different pictures and bring in 5 to 7 pictures, black and white, color, of your current event thing. So it doesn't need to be so heavy that, I have one in here that's sports, I think. That one's about this. So this is one. So, okay, so first of all, what you have them do is with the tempera paint, you have them paint like a patchwork like this. This is kind of a backgroundy. We're going to do it fast. And just tell them this is going to be the background of your, so fast, something like this. You can see there was what the background was on this. So paint that. And then we're going to set that aside while that dries. Then we're going to have them cut out their pictures. And so this one is something about some sort of science. So there was the scientist there, there's the heart, there's some germs there. So they had several different things. So cut all this stuff out. Lay it down, decide how it should go. This one is pretty straightforward. Some of them are more, like the ones up there kind of overlap. The ones up there are sports. This one, I don't know. This kid must have just come home from Hawaii because he had no current event, clearly, except Hawaii. But so have them cut them all out, put them on there, and then take a wash and paint. So it doesn't look like it's just stuck on there. Have them take a wash and kind of paint over it a bit. They can also, of the tempera. So just add a little bit of water onto it and paint over it. And then you can also put the oil pastels out, and they can add some accents to the oil pastels, because you can see it's not meant to be precise. It's not meant to be, if that wasn't painted over, and that would look like that's the most important part, so that's why they want to paint it over, that it's all kind of part of the event. So this one is another one that they have to do ahead of time. They got to have some stuff ready. You can have, if you have like newspapers and magazines and stuff out, I kind of find that when you do that, you know what they're going to find in those magazines, and you're like, oh my goodness, okay, forget that page. So I find it better to just tell them to bring their own stuff in. And this is a lot of what they will be doing in high school, is doing projects where they're expected to look online and find 10 things and incorporate them into articles and paper, and so they need to know how to do this. Some kids might not have the opportunities to print stuff, so find out if your kids can print stuff, or if there's somewhere at school they can print them. And so that's where, if they can't, that's where you got to get newspapers or magazines or something for them. So this one is you look at them and you're like, yeah, okay, I don't really need that framed at my house maybe. But they are very interested in this. They're very interested in you'll see them sitting at the table and they're talking about their current event, and they're getting into discussions about the event, and they can, some are really into the sports event, and some are into the politics so if you're school is going to be doing some sort of like project on, you know, social justice. Maybe you can say we're going to do your social justice. This is the artwork for your social justice project. Or if your school is doing, you know, like if you're doing it soon and here the A's are winning, we might want to do it on sports. I would say keep it away from the politics because that gets awfully heavy, and it's awfully heavy for the kids in the class, and it's just like they hear that all the time anyway, so try to find something a little more lighthearted and fun for them because they are only in 8th grade still. So they like this project a lot, and they have a lot to say about this project. Okay, Thomas Hart Benson. Okay, this one, you're going to use your piece of foil. So this is this piece of artwork. And this artist was another artist that liked to paint pictures of what was just going on around him. He wasn't a portraiture. He didn't have anything special. He just liked to paint what he saw around him, what was going on. This guy's sitting here. This guy looks like he's working. What's going on in the Midwest, in the South? So his pictures were pictures of people a lot of working pictures, because he felt this was the heart of America, were the working people of America. So all his pictures are very similar and of working people. So on that, we will. So for this one, I think you guys have the piece of foil, and let's see. So we're going to do a sketch. And then, I'm going to try to bring this up. How to draw a profile, because we're going to draw, see how he has, these are on that man is drawn in profile, which means it's a side view. They've done a lot of straight on views, but this one we're going to try to do a side view. And we're going to try to do a working person, so a person in action. So you can see that it looks like this man is taking a step. You can see he's leaning forward on that leg. You can see his arms are up like that. So what I'm going to do is, usually I have a kid or two come up and show me what the side view of what does a working person look like. And then I'll have someone give them idea, okay, the guy is using, or the girl is using a jackhammer. What does that look like? So they would be standing this way. They would hold, the arms would be out here. Maybe one foot would be back to stabilize them. So you can see how it bends at my hips. So I have a few people come up and do the side view of a working person. So then what we're going to do is, and you have another piece of paper there, and we're going to see how this, let's see, drag this one up. We're going to practice drawing the side view. So I get a piece of paper, and this one, the key to this one is to have everybody concentrate enough to fold the paper correctly. So you have the piece of paper, fold it exactly in half. And then in half, so you got this. Then we're going to fold it in half again. And this is just a scrap. Okay? So then I fold it in half again, which is going to give me. Pay attention now. So we've got 4 pieces, 4, and then I'm going to fold it again and try to, get it right in half there. And so I would absolutely have them do it all the time, whereas some of the times it's easier to like, okay, let me do that. No, they're in 8th grade. They need to know, do not touch their paper. And the other parents, back away from your child and let them do it themselves. If you have parents that are nice enough to be volunteering, I always remind them, you don't work at your own child's table. Don't go near your child. Don't even make eye contact. Stay away from your child, because that kid's here to learn art, and you do not need to monitor that kid in everything that they do. And sometimes you'll see the mothers like moving over and then helping. You're like, ugh. And if you're running it, you got to tell the parents, back away from the child, because you're not helping. So here's our piece. And I would do this with the kids so that and I'm going to do this I'm going to try to do it dark so you guys can all see what I'm doing. So I would have them number each one of these. 1, 2, 3. And on the, so you can see up here, let's move the artwork down. You can see, so each fold, it shows you what we're doing. Oh, wait a minute. I would kind of do it with them, but I would make copies of this so they're around there. So, because like once you guys see that, you can probably do quite well without a whole lot of jabbering, but we'll start. So I would see how on the first one, I'm going to do a head. The second one, about halfway down, I'm going to do another circle. And if they've done art in action all along, they've done like drawing horses with the circle and triangles, and they've drawn other people, so they're pretty good at this. The knee joint, okay, so let's move this up so you guys can see the bottom part. I'm assuming you've gotten that far, right? So we've kind of got our person in there. Man. So then I show them how once we've kind of got that in there, we kind of use the pencil and we kind of, that just kind of gives us the outline. And then, so I show them how we can, so that's the outline if the person was standing straight up, but if you wanted to then put the legs standing out a little bit, we'd draw a leg out. And if this guy is kind of standing on his legs, so using the same geometric shapes to make, and then you could put the other arm, come out from behind. And I'm going to give this guy his jackhammer. He's just standing there next to his jackhammer. So I show them how when they do this as in their sketchbook, or not in their sketchbook because you got to take a piece of paper out, but we do this just as a sketch. We kind of figure out like, oh, okay, well that guy's going to need to put a little more effort into it because they're using a jackhammer, so they might need to pivot at their hips or pivot at their knee joints. So anywhere where there's kind of a circle, that's kind of the pivot point. Yeah, that does happen in these. They do look a little, the kidney, the chub, yeah, you're like, wow, okay. But then once you have it, have the geometric shapes, just go around the edge and kind of smooth it out, and you can even erase so they can see the shape of this. And I'll see in the face, this is one part they always tend to miss, is the face. The face is not just a round thing, so you got to have the nose, give it a nose, and give the guy a nose and a chin, or a woman, whoever you got going here. Okay, so once they've practiced this, and you show them how you can pivot the leg out, because obviously you drew the straight version, but you didn't see the leg and the arm that are behind, which is something like third graders, they don't believe you of what's behind there, but the 8th grade, they know, well, the arm is there, so you need to bring the arm forward so you can see what's behind the other leg and arm. So once they've done this, they're like, okay, I kind of get what you're doing. So what I'm going to ask them to do is we're going to do, on their piece of paper, I have them paint a background quickly with watercolors. background wash, high horizon, pretty easy. Then what I'm going to have them do is take on the black, there's a black piece of paper. I'm going to have them draw with oil pastels, draw their person, their side of their person, cut it out. It's cut out and glue it onto their background. And so this is a person digging. Here's a person going to work. This briefcase. This person is going to have a career in water polo. And there they are. So I would say to give them a subject matter. If you just say a person doing something, they're like, what? So if you want to do sports, say someone doing sports, someone doing an action, someone going to work, because you have talked about the work issue. So you could say someone going to work. But give them a subject. If you just say a person, they're like, and then it'll take them 20 minutes to decide what kind of person they're drawing. So that you don't want to waste the time doing that. And this comes with a packet of pictures of people doing work to kind of give them an idea of what, if you're going to do the work thing, what does it look like when they're doing the work thing. You also, they're in 8th grade, they should be able to cut this out. And you think, well, okay, yeah. You'd be surprised how hard it is to cut these out. So be sure they have scissors that are big enough and sharp enough. Some schools have those little bitty things, and we're talking like 6-foot people with trying to cut with those, so they gotta have that. And if you have lefties, be sure they have a left-handed scissor, because it makes a huge difference. And I was kind of like, whatever, we can use those, until I had a left-handed kid who couldn't cut anything out. And then we finally got him left-handed scissors, and it was like, oh, it does make a difference. You can cut. So be sure the kids have the left-handed scissor. So this is a fun project. They like this project. Oh, here's another guy. What's this guy doing? Ooh, geez. Okay, just cut her arm off. Well, this is a person sitting there reading. You can see, oh, that's pretty good. And they drew with the oil color, they put the skin tone. You can see they have that's pretty good. So, but this is a good project. The kids like this project. There's enough to it that they're like, wow, I have to concentrate on this one. I can't just cut out the standard guy standing there like this. It's like, no, I want to profile, and I want to see him doing something. So you guys practice that. So, okay. This out. Okay, so this piece of artwork is by an artist named Judy Chicago. And this is a giant piece of artwork, a giant installation, because these are all like full size. And what she did is she tried to make a place setting at a table and these that represent all these different famous women. So if you looked at each one, and you can look these up online, like you can see one that's like Georgia O'Keeffe, and so she made a plate with a flower and things that represented that artist. So all these different artists, and these are sculptures that she made. So this one, maybe this one of these is like a doctor, and those are like the innards of a person. And so you can look at these, and she made one to represent all these different famous women. And she did a cloth. I mean, each one is really a huge project in itself to represent all these different people. And then all the names are written in here, and the names are written along here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a place setting for a famous artist. And this is another one that, so I'll just show you this one. So I'll bring the samples down here. So this is another one where you can see we're asking the kids to do some sort of homeworky stuff, bring stuff in, be prepared. You're going to high school next year. You have to be prepared to look stuff up online, print it out, bring it in, have it ready. so that you know what you're doing. So this one is Andy Warhol. So I have them bring in, I said, like, you need like 10 pictures of your artist that represent your artist. It doesn't have to be necessarily pictures that artist painted, but like Andy Warhol had the tomato soup, so they could bring in a picture of tomato soup. This one is Roy Lichtenstein, who we did at the beginning there. And so they brought in different pictures of that with the artist's name, the artist's signature, pictures of the signature. So I want you to bring in 10 pictures that represent the artist. I want you to bring in a picture of the artist. It's like, okay. So then what we're going to have them, when they come in here, is we're going to use a compass. I don't need you guys to do this today, but with a compass, I want them to draw a circle for, this is where the cup would be. So it comes with a cup, and they're going to put the artist picture in there, and we're going to put the cup on top because this is a place setting. So you have to, with the compass, draw the circle, and draw the circle on the back of your artist picture and cut it out in a circle. You're like, okay, easier said than done. Explaining about the compass, how the point goes in, how you rotate it. You really need to check your compasses that they're not loose, because sometimes they're so loose that there's no way the kid's going to be able to work with the compass. But so they draw that. Then here they're also going to draw a circle with the compass, a bigger circle, and they're going to cut out their pieces to fit in there. And then, or they can, if they put their pieces together online, it's like, I think one of these is done on, no. If they put their pieces all together, then they can draw the circle on it and cut it out to put, so that's the plate. I have them draw with a ruler again, a 1-inch strip across the bottom and 1-inch strip across the top. So they got to use the ruler, and you just say, I want a 1-inch strip. You're in 8th grade, you should be able to draw a 1-inch strip. But what they really have to do is measure here, because it's a long one. You got to measure 1 inch, a few spots, and then connect the dots to make the 1-inch strip. And then we have a little, it comes with napkin. You glue the napkin on there and draw something with on the napkin that represents the artist. And then this is a good one for if you have an open house or something, is just to set up a table, just like the Judy Chicago table, set up a table with each kid's picture. And it comes with like plastic spoons. So you can see, you can glue the spoon on there, and you can put a cup on there, so it really looks like a place setting. And they think they're just brilliant. They did this, so it's interesting. So they have to think of an artist and get this stuff ahead of time. This one is not hard to do if you don't have a lot of helpers in the room. The compass thing is a little challenging to them to figure out, how do I use the compass again? But they have done that before, so it's not totally a surprise to them. Like, I think they do one in the 6th grade where they don't even know which end is up at that point, but okay, this is George Siegel, and his artwork are life-size artworks in museums. And so this is like a real giant-sized door, and he puts a person in there. Again, just the average person coming out the door, that's what they would look like. And what he used to do is get his friends and neighbors and put canvas around them and let it dry and then cut it off, so we had a perfect like mask of them, of the whole body though. I don't know how many friends you'd have after that, but so this one we're going to look at the architecture of the doorway. And again, those engineer kids are going to be like, oh, give me my ruler. I'm good with this one. We're going to show them what like the different doors look like, the window, the archway, all the molding, and we're going to do a door, and then we're going to do a sculpture of a person there. So this is a 3-dimensional thing. So you have a piece of blue, I think, right? So I have them draw with the ruler a doorway. And there's some samples in the bag of different doorways so that they can look at different doorways and the different arches of what the different doorways will look like. We're going to cover this over, so you don't want to get into great detail, but they do want to look at this and they'll look at this with the ruler and draw a door, working on that. But so then what we're going to do, so let me draw my doorway. I'm going to just assume I used a lot of rulers and thought into my doorway. An arch. Fill up the whole page. You don't need excessive detail, but they will like a lot of detail. But because what we're going to do, this one is with this joint compound, and this stuff comes from Home Depot, and it's not very, it's not very expensive. Look, the key here is to look for this stuff. Like a week ahead, you go into your Art in Action cabinet and find this stuff, and then you got to open it up and check that it's not hard, because sometimes you can open it up and it's solid. You really can't reconstitute it. I've had people try, I'll just add water and mix it, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is worth like $6. Just go to Home Depot. Spare yourself all that misery at Home Depot. So be sure you have fresh compound. That's my recommendation here. So if they've had Art in Action before, they've used this sculpting compound when they made their Greek temples and stuff, so they know what this is. Although you always have to say, this is not food. There's always someone that's going to taste it. You're like, are you kidding me? This is not food. Do not eat this. It's not frosting. Okay, and so just want to throw that out there. So take a chunk of it. So what we're going to do is give them a plop and have them sculpt their door. So they paint it into the shape of their door, and that's why you can see as soon as you start this, you can see the details mean nothing because it's all covered up. But once they've drawn it, so at least they have the idea of what they want their door to look like. And then, so it looks about like that. And then in your tray, you'll see these little like toothpick-like things. And then while it's still wet, I'm going to scratch the details into it. So, and I'm going to have a piece of cloth there to scrape it off. So I will pass this around. Let's start. Are you ready? Ready for compound? So you can put some compound on there. And this is, they love this one. This is very forgiving because if you draw something and it's not right, you can just scrape it right off. So you've got your door. And so you guys can see the consistency of this stuff. It is kind of like frosting, but don't anyone eat it. Good.
Very American. Yeah, that's what my mom does. Don't like that.
So then they can work a little bit at making their doorway. And then as this dries, we're going to let that dry. Then we're going to use the piece of foil paper to get my scissor. So keep going there, keep going. Okay. Yep. So what this I'm going to do is, so you have your paper, your foil paper like this, and these are kind of the you know the things in the lunchroom and like they wrap hot dogs and stuff in. That's what these are. But when you get your Art in Action packet, it's packed for everyone to have one piece. So I tell the kids, if you make a mistake, you're going to have to, like an artist, you're going to have to figure out how that works, because we can't do redos. Anyone that that wants to do a redo, once one person redos, everybody wants to do a redo. So we have to say, well, you're going to have to make your sculpture work. So we have a piece like this, and they cut off. And they have to be kind of delicate about cutting. This is not a maniac cutting job here. Cut it up there and yeah. So they cut they cut their piece like this. We got our piece cut, and then they're gonna scrunch it in. I gotta lay it down. Scrunch in one leg. So you can see I just scrunched in to make each leg. Scrunch in an arm. Scrunch, yeah, I think that's a technical art term. Scrunch that in there. There you go. Until they make their person. So you cut out the two corners.
Yes.
Yeah, and then one straight up the middle for the leg.
It's here.
No. So
In the middle.
in the middle? Yeah, straight up there. That's going to be like between the leg.
Two
And then
pieces.
over on each side to pull off the arms. Let me show you again.
Sorry.
That's all right. I got them.
Yes, not this one.
So here's your piece. So I cut off for the so this is going to scrunch into the head, and then this is going to divide the two legs, and then not all the way in. So this part scrunches down into a leg. So see here, do you want, oh, there's a scissor. So cut the two edges for the two bits off for the head. I think in the book it gives you like dimensions for this, like it's 3 inches in, but I found the kids and the measuring and the ruler and the foil, they just got a big, it was really not that necessary to do all that measuring. So then, okay, so see you cut the two corners off.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
You have a scissor?
Yep.
Yeah. So cut your two corners off. So this is kind of something I would kind of do with them, just like we're doing now. Some people got the whole body going, and some are still going, cutting. But I would kind of do this all together so we get a guy. So you got your head. So you got this part's your head, and then you cut up the center for the legs. And then you have to cut a little, yeah, that's good. Those are the legs, yeah, and then over there, yeah. Cut over, yeah, that's probably fine. And the same on the other side. And then scrunch. And if you have this extra piece, if you want to put that back in the back of the head to make it more head, you can do that. If your head isn't, or stomach. Now I have seen, I had a teacher that went to the whole thing about covering the teaching the kids about the pieces of cotton dipped in stuff, put it over their hand to give them the shape. Like this is what he did when he would get like a whole person, he would cover them in that material and let it dry and pop it off. Yeah, I saw a teacher do that. so that's an alternative that you can do for it, but that's a whole she was very energetic. So then I get my person, and so I have found like this, within an hour, this door might not be dry. So I would maybe lay these two together and then glue gun it on myself or glue it with regular glue later. But if it is, if they can do it, if I put it on now, it's too wet. It's going to smear that. But I can look at it, I'm like, oh, my person is way too tall for this. So I might want to do a little shortening of the legs. Put a hand on the hip. Maybe that head is way too big. So make my person that's going to fit better in front of the door there. And I'll show you the kids. Ooh, oh, that one's falling apart. Their piece of blue is bigger than. So this one, it looks like the guy is opening the door, which is kind of cool. And then, I don't know what these people are doing, but these people are standing in front of the door. So kind of teaches them, shapes. It teaches them, it teaches them to think ahead. Think of the whole project before we're done. What is this going to be? This is a good one that you want to have a label on the back before you start. Because you get done and then you're like, oh God, how do I put the names on all these things? So let me put this down here. So another thing to think about before you start is how am I gonna get these out of the classroom? Because I know some people are in a classroom and then 5 minutes later, as soon as you're done, we're going to be teaching math in here, so get this stuff out of here. And you're like, oh, how do I do with all this wet stuff? Where am I going to put all this stuff? So have a plan. Some schools have a drying rack that they put stuff in, and you can put several classes worth of stuff in the drying rack. But you need to know and be prepared if you're going to be able to use that. If not, I've had some schools make, if your school will let you take a large piece of poster board and laminate it. So you have a piece of laminated material here. You can use these for several years because it's just like a big placemat, and you put those out and the kids can do the work on that placemat and then it comes off fairly easily. You can stack those up and take those, and it's not quite as messy of what do I do with the tables? Do I cover them? It's kind of hard to get newspapers now, or what do I do? So think ahead of how you're going to set up your classroom and how you're going to what are you going to do with your artwork? How am I going to get this all out of here? If there's somewhere to let it dry. Okay. I also make a point of, if you have like a school newsletter or something, that you can put in the school newsletter or your class newsletter, next Tuesday is going to be Art in Action, so it's going to be messy. So don't wear your finest, because we're going to, like this plaster, you get this all over and it's on their clothes. You don't want to be responsible for that. I find kids, once they see me wearing my apron, and I purposely do not wash the aprons, because some in 8th grade, they're afraid, I don't want to get my clothes dirty or my hands, and so, they're painting like this, and I'm just like, oh, it's fine, it's dirty. So I encourage them to this Art in Action. You can be free and you can be dirty, and it's all right. You can wash, all the stuff washes off eventually. So, but I would put in the newsletter that next week is Art in Action. So this one, we're going to do the paint that you have there that we put out. So this one, you have a piece like this, and we're going to use a protractor, which they have been introduced to in the classroom of what is a protractor. And they should in 8th grade math, they should have done some sort of like dividing of angles, dividing out with the protractor. You might want to ask your teacher when they're going to do the protractor work, because it would be convenient to put this in at that time if that works. These do not need to be done they don't need to be done in the order that's here. You can definitely see what your teacher says and see where you can fit them in if they have something that they need to have that done. So let's get, here's our, I got paints. For this one, I would, if you have a lot of paintbrushes, like some schools have a ton of paintbrushes, I would give out as many paintbrushes as they need. It's a lot easier to do that than to do the constant washing of the paintbrush, because that incorporates water into this, and then it gets just too messy with water, and you can't paint one color next to the other if you have that. So if you have the paintbrushes, I would put them out and say, okay, I'm going to wash all these paintbrushes. So inside the pack you can get, inside the pack is a template that you cut out these protractor-like shapes. So you guys have these out here. So let's, just for the practice, we're just going to trace one on here. The project, I'm going to ask them to put 3 on the piece of paper because they have a big piece of paper. Oh, I don't think I even showed you the picture, did I? Here we go. Here we go. So this is Frank Stella. So it looks like 3 protractor pieces. 1, 2, and this one is behind the other one. So I'm going to ask them to do 3 different protractor pieces on their paper. I'll show you the sample so you understand. So the kids have the paper that's this size. So I asked them to draw 3 on there, and they're so excited in 8th grade that they're going to be using like paint. And a lot of kids, this might be the end of their painting days, so they're really happy to be using the paint. Along the way in 8th grade, I remind the kids that when they get to high school, they are going to be asked to do a fine art. So they might do singing or music or art. So you might want to think about, if you'd like to do art, that you might want to do this in high school. And that kind of they're like, really? Like, oh, wow, okay, there's an option that I kind of like. And I'm always surprised at kids that come back to me and say, oh, I chose drawing, or I chose art, sculpture. I'm like, oh, really? You never paid attention once, but good for you. So it's interesting who will come out and try the art in the end. So if you can trace your protractor here at least, we'll have you guys paint 1. And I want them to do 1. So they've traced that. So we've got that far. Then I'm going to do 1 straight up the middle. And then I want them to divide each side into 3 parts. And I found that some of the engineer kids are like, oh, well, I can't just wing it into 3 parts. I have to divide it evenly. And we're like, relax. You can pretty much figure it out. Just estimate 3. And I'm going to have them do 1 where I'm going to use using the same color and doing different tints and shades on 1. So say I want to do so say I decide to do the yellow, and I'm going to do 1, the lightest yellow, and then I'm going to over to the darkest yellow. So I'm going to need to do 5 different shades of it. So I'll start with my lightest one, so I'll add a little bit of yellow to the white. So you add just a little bit of color to the white. You don't do it the other way around, because if you see you add white to yellow, you need a lot of white. So I'm just going to do a little. And I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to add some more. Yellow's a hard color. Blue is maybe easier to get different shades. So I want them to do at least one of these where it's all one color. So that they kind of understand the adding the color to it, what that's doing when I add the white. And then I'm going to start to add a little bit of black to it. So just the teeniest amount of black. Oops. The teeny tiny. So the amount of black that I gave you is even more black than they need. They just need like literally a drop of black, because you can see that the black, it goes to almost pure black pretty fast. Need a little more color into that to make it blacker, darker. And you see, I haven't incorporated any water into this at all. To kind of get my fine lines, it's hard if you start adding water into it. So now I would put the brush down, and then I would pick up another brush to do maybe my outline here. So when I introduce this to them, they've all been introduced to the color wheel. And I'll show you. So that's my fine art there. The color wheel over here, and they should have a color wheel in the classroom maybe, or maybe they have small ones that you can kind of pass out to everybody. But I show them how, if they want to, so now if you want to do your other, when you do your other two, you might want to do it green, and they say, well, I don't have any green on my palette. So if they look at the color wheel and say, well, if you want green, you got to mix the yellow and the blue to get your green. So now you might want to do a green one, and then you might want to do an orange one or a purple one. And so you can see that from this work here, this piece, like this one did what you did. It did the blue from the light to the dark, then another one of the orange, but then started to wanting to do different colors and experiment with mixing the paints. And so when I told the kid to divide it up into 6 pieces, the kid did it, but you can see where they started. Like, oh, okay. So you see, they did 6 from the corner instead of doing that first line that we did through the center. It's like, okay, well, you divided it into 6. Okay. So that's just where they can go with their dividing. And then, of course, once this guy started dividing, then, they were on a mission to divide and mix colors, and which is fine. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So most of them will turn out looking more like this. This is the kind of, and then once they got going, then they wanted to add, other pieces, and they're off the page, and so they like this one a lot. This is an easy one to do. Put the pencil in there. I would say that you wouldn't want to probably do this all by yourself, but when they're there, they're happy to do this. But I would also tell them when they're doing this that now that we're done, we're going to have to clean up after it. So if you don't have a sink in the classroom, I just have everybody put all the dirty stuff in one big bucket. that has to be taken somewhere to clean. But I tell them we got to clean up this whole classroom for the next group, and they're pretty good about. Yeah, that makes sense. You guys can see these baby wipes. Most schools don't have these, but I find that the docents are like, oh, I'll spring for baby wipes, because these are a big help in the classroom.
Well, we have antibacterial, but we need baby wipes.
Yeah, these things are, I guess you can get antibacterial wipes.
Clean the tables.
Oh,
Get those for the kids.
yeah, you don't want to wash your hands with those ones, those Lysol scrubbers. So, okay, so does anyone have any questions or concerns, thoughts, what we could do, what we should do? At the 8th grade, on the last day of the 8th grade, last Art in Action day, what I've done is taken out all the posters and put them up from kindergarten or whatever grade your kids started, like if they're only 6th, 7th, and 8th, 6th grade, put all of them out. And then they all come and they think they're going to sit down. I'm like, no, nobody's sitting down until you can tell me about one of these pieces of artwork. Tell me one thing. And so they're looking back at maybe 9 years of artwork that they've done or 3 years of artwork, and I want them to look at that. They might not know the artist's name, but they'll know of one of them. They'll be like, oh, yeah, that's Georgia O'Keeffe. Great, you can sit down. Next. And when they realize I got to say something before someone else, because they are very interested in what they have to say and what they remember. And so even if they look at that Dorothea Lange and they can't tell you the artist, but they can say those were migrant workers in California, that's good, you can sit down. So anything that they can remember about that, it's really funny, and to listen to them, what they do remember all the way through. I have to tell you, we did finger painting in about 2nd grade. I had the kids, we're all finger painting, and then the fire alarm went off. And I'm like, oh shit, what is that? Of course. In 8th grade, they're all like, oh, that was the one, Mrs. Clancy, remember when she cursed at us? I'm like, oh, okay, people, can you remember anything else? So they do remember what goes on in Art in Action. And I've also had some kids come back to me a few years ago. A girl was going to study, she was in college, she's going to study abroad, and she was going to Italy, and she wanted to know where that mosaic was that we learned about, and where it was, because she wanted to visit it. So I said, okay, let me get back to you on that. I don't even remember. And I looked back, and I started in 8th grade, and then I looked in 7th and 6th. The mosaic we'd done in kindergarten, and she remembered that that was in Italy, and that someday she wanted to go see that mosaic. So it does sink in. That's all I have to tell you. So, and they remember, and they enjoy it, so help them to enjoy it. And do we have any questions? Nothing? Okay. Then you guys get to help clean up. So anything that, like paintbrushes, go in this bucket up here. Anything that your artwork that you don't want to take home, you can put in the bin over there. And the paint palettes over there. And the water like this, you can just put the whole thing in the bucket here, because we'll take the bucket to wash it off.